Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Okay, this just in. This is a news flash. Please listen carefully. You need to know this. Life is not perfect. And there it is. Like you needed a news flash. But I wanted to remind you of that because sometimes when life doesn't go exactly the way you want it to, things pop up, you realize whether you can move forward. How do you move forward? It all comes under one word, resilience. We're going to look at that word and talk about ways to move your life forward when you encounter those things. And I don't like to call them mountains that get in your way. I like to call them speed bumps. I like to minimize them a little bit so it's easier to go over them. And she is somebody that helps people all the time, mentally, even it translates physically once you get the brain working the way it should be. She is a brain health expert and coach and the founder of the Brain Performance Center in Dallas, Texas. And she's back with us. Leigh Richardson is back on the program. Hi, Leigh. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So good to have you back with us. And now we did dig a little deep into how the brain operates and how we can translate that to making our lives better. When it comes to resilience, why don't we just define that word right now? How would you define it?
Well, I would define it as, being able to bounce back up. When somebody knocks you down, how quickly can you bounce back up? And we all are going to have things that will knock us down. But being able to spring back into shape and being able to come back with a smile on our face and tell ourselves we can do it. And sometimes that can be really hard to do because sometimes that can be a difficult conversation.
Without a doubt. And there are many levels of, I guess, resilience depending on your situation. Some things are easier to bounce back from than other things.
Absolutely. And I think, what really gets in the way of our resilience is life. It's just what goes on in our life, the environment that we're in. I mean, we have our jobs, we have our relationship with our partner, we have our friends, we have, finances. There's a lot that can vary in just our everyday life. And when it does vary, it makes us feel like we're not in control.
Do you feel that once we come to that realization of dealing with a major situation, that it gets easier sometimes when other things pop up, where you find that you have faith in yourself to say, oh, I did that. How did I pull that one off? Things are okay. That was a shock, but I'm moving forward.
Well, I think that if you think about resilience and you think about a model and you kind of get that in your head. So, the first thing that we have to deal with, everybody, I don't care how much money you have, or we have to deal with life. So what is in our daily life? And then if we look at our environment and we identify we have lots of fun stuff in there too. Identify the playground. Where do you go to play? But then identify the environment that you're not always in control of. Your job, what's going on with your family and your friends, what's going on with the stock market. Oh my gosh. So that's the first thing, is to really identify what's in your life world. And then to stop and think about your emotional feelings, because that's really what guides you. When I think about, I heard something this morning about the feds and the interest rate, and now I'm to a point where I turn it down. I do not want to hear it. And personally, I'm not getting ready to make a loan or anything, but it's just, it evokes feelings, and it evokes feelings and emotions. And that's what guides me. That's what makes me turn that radio down. And I think that every time something upsets us in life, we're going to react to it. I mean, I do. Don't you?
100%. And I get what you're saying. Sometimes you want to turn down the noise. It just gets to a point where it's like, I can't deal anymore.
And I think that what we need to recognize is that guides us. And we need to pay attention, to what are we feeling? If you listen to something on the television that makes you angry, pay attention to that. And most of the time it's just like, oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Or however you want to try and deal with it, we'll try to put it in a box and put it away. But I encourage people to recognize what they're feeling and recognize what those emotions are and pay attention to them. I mean, that's what kind of is going to help us navigate our way around. And if we ignore it, if you stick your head in the sand, you're not going to know where you're going.
How do we increase our capacity for resilience?
Well, I think, if you pay attention to your feelings and your emotions, and then what about your personal values? Those are, your values are determine how you want to live your life, right? And so many people get hung up in unproductive core values, and they lose sight of what really is important to them. And, a good example of that is if you believe, well, the only time that it really matters is if everybody likes what I say. Well, good luck with that one. That doesn't happen very often in my world. How about yours?
Yeah, no, definitely not. How do you realize? Let's go back to the beginning in a situation. Let's say you've had something major happen in your life, maybe unexpected, and you need to find the strength to move forward, and then subsequent situations after that. How do you build up that resilience? How do you build that, I guess, confidence in yourself, the faith in yourself that you can push it forward?
Well, and we're building on that answer, because I think if you pay attention to your feelings, if you, stay true to your personal values, and you let those core beliefs guide you, instead of, I can't feel, kind of what I alluded to. Let's say that I have a teenager. My friends will come over and they'll see my messy room. And so, oh my gosh, it's going to be a disaster. And you know what? A realistic response is most teenagers do have a messy room, So you have to think about what is a realistic thought and how are we distorting those thoughts. And we all do it. And we let the things that are really slowing us down. And usually, if you stop and think about it, you'll identify something. Something is standing my way, and somebody, whether it's something that you can control or maybe it's just a weakness. I know financial analysis is not my strength, and anytime that I have to make a major decision that requires financial analysis, that can put a leak in my boat. And I have to be aware of that. So, pay attention to what your strengths and your weaknesses are, because we all have them. And what a lot of times I'll try to do is I'll try to focus on my strengths and focus on, what are my good coping skills instead of my behavioral reaction, which may be anger, or it may be on a cognitive level is ruminating thoughts. Don't focus on that. Focus about, what am I going to put my energy? What am I going to put my enthusiasm into? And during the pandemic, that really was hard for me. But during the pandemic, I decided that I would paint. And I did paint. I did complete one piece of art, and I named it My Heart and Soul. And now, do I have any great aspirations to continue on? No. But that was a coping skill for me to use to get through that situation. And most of the things that bring our resilience down are just situations.
There's so many situations that we have to deal with from personal, and I'm right there with you, Leigh, on the financial thing. All you have to say is, anything dealing with finance, I walk away. I get somebody else to deal with it because it's not in my wheelhouse. So maybe, what we're saying here is to find what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and address them so that you could have somebody to lean on to take care of those things for you or to help you with those things. Because let's face it, financially, all that's going to do is weigh people like you and me down and bring on unneeded stress because we know we can't handle it. I guess you
Absolutely.
You could say in the big picture, if you wanted to put your mind to it, you could probably figure a lot of it out. But there's so much other stuff going on. Why should you? Why would you? If you've got somebody you can lean on, bookkeeper, accountant, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And I think, that's accepting, a lot of that has to do with accepting yourself for what you are. You've got your strengths, you've got your weaknesses. And then, you've got things that just happen in life. And some of the best things in life can really change it. Falling in love can really change a person's resilience. Losing a loved one can too. So there's things that happen in life that we just have to accept and wrap our head around it. Maybe during this time, if you've lost a loved one, maybe you need to do some grief counseling. And maybe there are things that we can do for ourselves to help us get through those times. But I think too many times we'll say, oh, I'm just so unmotivated. I just don't have to get up and go. I don't really understand how talking to somebody could help me. And trust me, it really and truly can, because as you process what's going on in your head and as you recognize that loss of a loved one, when you stop and think about it, maybe that's not a big surprise. Maybe that's something that was talked about a year ago. But then we have the positive, and when you get the unexpected, you meet somebody, you fall in love. It's the best feeling in the world. But how do you keep that into context? How do you keep realistic expectations around that? And so I think there's a lot of things, and the people that surround us can help us with that. That's what you've got family and friends for, to help you keep our expectations in balance.
How can we find that faith in ourselves, aside from getting other people to help us do things that don't support us or is out of our wheelhouse? How do you build that up in yourself? I can say personally that I have realized that if I got through one big thing, life-changing thing, the other things are easier. But sometimes you have to go through it till you realize it.
Well, and what helps me get through those things is goal setting goals. I'm going to eat that elephant one bite at a time. And that really does help me, and it builds my confidence. Once I accomplish those small goals, those daily goals, and then oh my gosh, I accomplished everything I needed to accomplish this week. And then you move on and you start setting longer-term goals. And the more you accomplish those, the more your confidence builds. And I think it's really important because as you focus on your goals, you're tying in those values, those beliefs that we talked about a little bit earlier. And when you can create that alignment within yourself, that is when you can really move forward.
Yeah. It's for those of us who are set in our ways, shall we say, where one little thing could upset us, and when I say upset, I don't mean just emotionally. I just mean, like the rug being pulled underneath you, and now you have to react quickly or figure it all out. How can you help many of us when it comes to resilience?
Well, I think the main thing is really working off a model. And I like to draw a picture of a model. And, the first part of that model, we talked about, those are your emotions. Those are your feelings, because people sometimes really aren't clear on what their emotions. Well, they know happy, they know sad, they know mad, and they know angry. But, what about your intuition? What about those? A lot of times I'll do something and I'll look back and I'll go, wow, that was a good decision. I'm not real sure why I made that decision. And it's just my intuition that guided me. So I think that's important to recognize. And then tie into your personal values, because in talking about what your personal values are and how you can get those in alignment, because a lot of times we know in our heart what matters the most to us, but when we get pulled in one direction, there's always peer pressure. There's all these different influences that can pull us in a different direction that pulls us away from our values. And a lot of times for values, I'll ask people, make a list of your core values. What are your core beliefs? I mean, for me, honesty. And I'll never forget raising my two boys. My core value is you be the one to tell me. Don't let me hear the truth from somebody else. Think enough of me to tell me the truth. And, getting in touch with what's really important to you. And then playing into, make a list of your strengths and your weaknesses. Identify what strengths that you have that if they were just a little bit stronger, they could definitely carry through your weaknesses. And Steve, I tend to focus on the positive because it's our nature not to. That's the way the brain works. Research shows every day we have 3 times more positive events in our day than negative. But what does the brain hold on to? It holds on to the negative. And you really have to work hard to put positive psychology in your life. Get rid of that negative. And I tell at least once when I'm working with a client, I'll say, we always find what we're looking for. So what are you looking for? If you're looking for the negative, if you're looking for the bad, you're going to find it. You know, I mean, we do. That's just life. So look for the good. Look for what are things that make you give you energy. What are things that you can get enthusiastic about? And it doesn't have to be anything major for me. During the pandemic, I decided I wanted to learn to paint. I can't say I learned to paint, but I did produce a painting, and that's close enough for me.
It's interesting how you pivoted to something else that was satisfying to you. So you didn't have to deal with maybe some major stuff, or it grounded you. And I'm totally on your page when it comes to the negativity. We're just wired that way to look at the negative. It's sad, but I guess we're wired that way. Evolution has done it so that we're prepared to fight or deal with something that's bad. Does that sound reasonable?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. This is the same brain that we had back in the caveman days. You know, you used to walk out that cave and you had 2 choices, eat or be eaten. 2/3 of the cells in the right hemisphere of the brain are scanning for danger. That's the way our brain was wired. Well, it's still wired that way. We're still scanning for danger, and that's how we protect ourselves. That's how we take care of ourselves. And certainly we live in a different world where we have a lot more options for self-care than we did before. But there's still a lot of people that don't have as many options. And so the brain is the way we protect ourselves. But we just need to be sure that at the end of the day, we appreciate the positivity that came into our day. And maybe that means you got a really nice email from someone thanking you for a favor you did them. Or maybe it means you're driving home and you're late, and that guy let you pull right out in front of him. That made you catch the green light. You know, those little things can put a big smile on my face, and they remind me, well, I'm grateful. I'm thankful that energy came my way today.
It's almost as if you need to see the little things, which we often lose sight of.
Oh, we do. And there's a great saying that Mother Teresa has, and it says, and this isn't exact, but basically it's keep your focus on the small things because it's the small things that matter. And it's so true. I don't know about you, Steve, but when the little things go my way, I have a great day.
Isn't it weird? Like, honestly, isn't it strange how that works?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when something really big goes my way, I'm a little overwhelmed because I wasn't expecting it. I may be a little bit shocked, still trying to believe that for 100%, yep, that's exactly what happened. But a little thing goes my way and I'm all over it.
This is what I've learned. What you're saying. Those little things make things so much better. It is, and it's weird. Like, you could be having a meh kind of day, and the littlest thing pops up. That's just a happy thought. Wow, that actually worked out, and it's a game changer in the entire day.
But you have to remember that's what you pay attention to. Pay attention to that, not and remind yourself during the day. Oh, remember, you had a great morning. And I always try to let those things motivate me. And, well, does that mean I'm going to have a great afternoon? Heck yeah. I'm going to go out and put my energy out there, and what goes around comes around. And if I can give back to to someone the goodness that I've experienced, I honestly believe it's going to come right back at me.
Yeah. If you just, and I know it sounds cheesy and some people may hear it and say, oh, that's all woo-woo, come on. No, if you keep that positivity is going to work for you.
And you're right. Some people do say it's woo-woo, and you can call it whatever you want. I choose to call it positive psychology.
Never thought of it in that terms. But yes. And you do it to yourself, whether it's good or bad. We're responsible. We make the choice. We make the choice to let something weigh on us that may be negative.
We absolutely do. And I'm not saying that every day that we're capable, we have those choices and we're capable of making the best choices. Life gets in the way, and that's when that resilience goes down. And when that happens, maybe some anxiety rolls in, maybe some depression rolls in, maybe some mood swings come into play. And that's when you have to really stop and think about, what are you thinking? What are those thoughts going on in your head? Because we all have self-defeating thoughts. We all have negative thoughts. And I mean, I used to have the worst case of the shoulds, if I haven't shared that with you already. Oh my gosh. Leigh, you should do that. Leigh, you didn't do that. Shame on you. It's all your fault. Nothing's working.
Yeah.
And when that shame and blame came out, I'm like, man, those shoulds got to go. They have got to go. So I replaced them with the coulds. Well, Leigh, you could do that. Well, if I did that, this would happen. Okay, I like that. Well, this would happen. I don't know about that. Well, this would happen. That's okay. Okay, I'll do it. So it's just, those unhelpful thinking styles that we have. And we all have them. We don't have to keep them. We can change them. I mean, do you know anybody that's a perfectionist?
Do I?
Uh-huh.
That was me.
Well, do you think you had all or nothing thinking going on?
How do you mean that?
Well, sometimes it's called black and white thinking. Either you do it right or not at all.
Yes, I have to agree with that. And it's funny that back in the day, I always wanted to do radio broadcasting since I was 9 years old. I also wanted to be a cartoonist. So I was kind of looking at both. And then I started working in radio when I was a teenager professionally, but I also continued with cartooning and almost became a syndicated cartoonist in my low 20s. And there was a newspaper article that I came across recently. It's actually on the wall in my office. When I was 17, local paper did a story on my cartoons. And in there, it says, quote from me, "I'm a perfectionist." And
wow.
Yeah, I carried that with me for decades until I realized that doesn't support. You can't be perfect. You can try as much as you want to, but just be happy who you are. Be happy with, what you do and just do the best you can. And that's it. There we go. That's it. Took a long time to figure that one out. But you know what? Goes back to upbringing. Maybe I felt that I wasn't good enough or I needed to do better for a lot of reasons. So you put the perfectionist label on, but it, doesn't support anybody when you do that.
No, it doesn't. And, the other thing I think we all do is we have a mental filter that we pay attention to certain things because those certain things that we're paying attention to, they reconfirm our personal beliefs. So, I always encourage people to take that mental filter and put it aside for a little while and try to see things just as clearly as you can instead of trying to filter it through. And I'm the worst. I want it Leigh's way. And I'll try to see it Leigh's way. But I've had to learn that you can try all you want. That doesn't mean it's going to come out Leigh's way.
Yeah, it's so true. But sometimes you don't realize it because you're deep into it,
Well, and sometimes I keep insisting that it will if I just try harder. And that's something that really, you after time, you realize you can't try any harder than you've tried.
No, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work.
You accept it for what it is. So for people that do have unhelpful thinking styles, I encourage you, stop and think about it. But I call them ants. They're automatic negative thoughts. They go through your head so fast and so furious, you don't even know that they were there. It's just all of a sudden, wow, I'm feeling down, or I'm mad, or I'm overwhelmed, or I got a brain fog going. And you don't know why, because those little ants ran through your head. So for our listeners, that if you ever feel like you'll experience all of a sudden something will change the way you're thinking or your mood, stop and think about what just happened. What did you just react to?
So you're saying process it. Take a look at it. And how did you react to it?
Absolutely. And sometimes it helps. For some people, it helps to write it down, because that's a good bit of processing to get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. That's a fair amount of processing.
Yeah. We don't do that. We don't take the time to do that. We
don't have the time.
Or we don't have the time because we're doing, looking at other stuff. I know you have the time to help people with many, many different challenging situations when it comes to therapy involving mental health in our brains, everything from anxiety to ADHD, even depression, fear, panic attacks. I could see a lot of people who think that they can do it all or be perfect, that can not support them. If somebody wants to work with you, and I know that you have insurance coverage where applicable, how does it work to work with the Brain Performance Center?
Well, to work with the Brain Performance Center, the best thing to do is to call the Brain Performance Center. And we can explain to you, a lot of what we do is not covered by insurance, but some of what we do is, and we can explain what that is and how that works. I'm in Texas, and the counseling is done on a state-by-state level. I'm licensed in the state of Texas, so there's some restrictions there. But certainly the best way to figure out, how things can be handled is to call the office, and we'll explain to you the different things that we do and the different ways that they can be addressed. And I encourage people to, take care of yourself, and we don't want to do that. Women are the worst. Women will take care of everybody, and I include myself in this, but I'll take care of everybody in my family before I stop and take care of myself. And I'll never forget my mom, right after I had my twins, she said, "Leigh, you better learn now. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else." And I did learn that. So I'd like to share that message with our listeners. Take care of yourself, because then you're able to do so much more for everybody else.
Well, it goes back to what we said previously, the analogy on the airplane. You got to put the mask on you, the oxygen mask, before you can put it on somebody else. And it's so true. If you're all over the place, you're not going to be able to take care of somebody else. So I urge everybody, go to the website and learn more. thebrainperformancecenter.com. That's the website, right?
It is. It absolutely is. And you can find us on Facebook or Instagram, and you can find Leigh Richardson on LinkedIn. So there's all kinds of information out there, and I encourage our listeners to at least look at it and use it to help you focus on what your needs are. Yeah.
And build that resilience. You're going to need it at one point or another. You will.
If not tomorrow.
Yeah. You never know. And that, you know what, Leigh, in closing here, that was my aha moment when it comes to resilience. There's no guarantees in life at all. So if you think something's going to be one way, you better start looking at that and be resilient, because, the car could turn any moment and you need to bounce back from that. It's always great talking with you. I love your insight and your passion for helping people. And I look forward next time we get a chance to talk, Leigh.
Thank you so much, Steve. Have a great day.
You too. We'll be right back. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.